Okay. Hello, scholars. This video is for EDUC 2400 School, Society, and Social Differences. And it is specifically for our school practicum assignment. And what I'm going to focus on today is Principle 8 of the Enduring Principles of Learning. So remember that we created a chart and we graphed out Dr. Ladson-Billings' 3 principles of successful teaching and learning for all learners. We said that we need high levels of academic achievement, high levels of cultural competence from both the teacher and the students, and then we need high levels of criticality. Okay, so that sounds great, right? But what do we look for when we go into the classroom? And so I have the opportunity where I get to watch a lot of teachers teach and a lot of student teachers teach. And so, how do I know when I'm seeing good teaching or exemplary teaching? Because remember, if it's exemplary, then it has to have all 3 principles that Ladson-Billings talked about. So, what exactly am I looking at? And so, I'm going to share with you my screen where I have the enduring principles of learning here. And what I'm going to focus on today is Principle 8, Student Directed Activity, SDA, Student Directed Activity. And this is about teaching through self-directed learning and specifically students self-directed learning. So this principle talks about that teachers should encourage student choice in learning to enhance their motivation and their levels of participation and learning. So that makes sense, right? If we have choices in things, we're more likely to be more excited about it, more fully engaged, more committed when we have some choice. It kind of reminds me of when my kids were little and I would give them some choices about what they were going to wear for the day when they were learning to dress themselves. I didn't let them just choose anything, but I had like structured choices that they could choose from within this range. So the older the learners are and the more practice that they have had with self-directed learning, the more that you can make the choices a little bit bigger and more truly authentic with them choosing it. It's not that it isn't a real choice if I'm saying you can choose between this and this. I've limited the choices, but you still have some choice. And remember, when you give students a choice, you actually have to honor that, or students are not likely to believe you anymore, and they'll think, well, my teacher lies. She might say it's a choice, but really it's not. So you don't want to get caught into that sort of a thing. Okay, and the reason that I wanted to focus on Principle 8 today was because in other semesters, I've really seen students be confused about what they're looking for when they're watching teachers teaching, and they'll put down SDA. And I'm like, I didn't see anything from your example of what you're saying is student directed activity that shows that teachers and students actually had choices in their learning. So, what I want you to do is understand what student self-directed learning is and what it looks like in practice. Okay. So when you're analyzing videos, you aren't just putting, well, I think it's SDA. No, if it's SDA, it has to be student directed activity. Something in that lesson should be where students have a choice. Now, remember, these principles are not going to be all of them in every single lesson plan. So, but if I were in your classroom like if you're an elementary teacher and I saw your classroom and I started with you in the morning and went to lunch, I should see somewhere in one of those morning lessons, I should see that students had some student directed activity choices. They should have self-directed learning opportunities. If you were a secondary teacher, maybe I happen to come when you're doing an introductory lesson in your unit, and choices wasn't really part of where you're kind of having to introduce things. Okay, that's fine. It won't be in every single lesson. However, it should pop up. So if I am watching more lessons in your unit, the further you get into the unit, the more and more choices that I should see you having yours available for your students in your own teaching. Okay, I'm thinking about it even for university professors. I think this could possibly be something that, I need to work on giving you more choices as well. So this is something that's good for all teachers. Okay, so let me see if I can decline that call and stop sharing that screen with you. And I want to now show you a video where the teacher is talking about using primary sources. And I want you to listen for anything that you hear about a student-directed activity. That's Principle 8, okay? So I'm going to share that screen once more with you and turn the video on. Okay.
You make this happen when it comes to social studies by using culturally relevant pedagogy with primary sources. Primary sources are firsthand evidence of the past. They highlight authentic voices and reflect multiple perspectives and cultures. They also facilitate students' own cultural competence, which is a key element of culturally relevant pedagogy, or CRP. CRP is a teaching framework established by Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings. There are 3 tenets to CRP. All students must experience academic success, develop cultural competence, and have opportunities to examine and critique the status quo. This video focuses on tenet 1. All students experience academic success.
My favorite part about being a teacher is creating and really truly collaborating with the students.
We're going to come back to this. We're going to read it. I know.
My name is Andrea Bell Myers. I'm a 5th grade teacher here at Boraz Community School.
The reason why I began practicing cultural relevant pedagogy is I wanted to have an opportunity for folks to understand different narratives. Hi, my name is David O'Connor. I am the American Indian Studies Consultant at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction.
When I was in 5th grade, oftentimes the narrative in history books would say that my history started in chattel slavery. You know, as a kid, that just makes you feel not very proud and not very good about yourself. So I wanted to introduce the Kings because we had a history like way before then. And that's never really discussed in a school setting in the curriculum.
Okay, I'm going to stop the video right there just to make a couple comments. Notice how the teacher that was speaking there, she was saying that when she was in 5th grade, her identity wasn't in the curriculum. And the only time that they talked about Black Americans was with chattel slavery. And so she didn't feel very good about that. And so it was like, well, you know, other groups have these histories in the Renaissance and in Europe and, you know, so on, the Vikings. And so she didn't feel very good about it because it was something that started in the United States and it was about the enslavement of human beings. So do you see that's actually criticality right there? So she's doing a couple things at once. Number one, she is focusing on high levels of academic achievement. As you'll see, she gets going talking a little bit more about her lesson and unit, that the reason that she brings kings in is she's doing this higher order thinking skills, and it isn't just filling in a workbook and like giving spelling words where she says something like Kurt. The teacher responded in a curt voice, Kurt. That, I mean, sometimes you have to do things like that are very low level, but if most of your teaching is like that at low level, that's not high levels of academic achievement. So you'll see that she's going to really amp this focus on kings up to where they're analyzing, evaluating. It's lots of things on Bloom's hierarchy of the higher order thinking skills. Okay. And then the reason that she chose kings here, this is about students' identities here. This is cultural competence. She's affirming that. She's like, well, a lot of times we don't have these stories of what people did in other times. And so cultural competence, that's my identity. I should be in the classroom as a student. And she's saying, well, a lot of times students' backgrounds aren't in the classroom and in the curriculum. And so she's affirming their identities and bringing it in. It's not that she's saying Shakespeare isn't important. She's just saying that there are Shakespeare type content and materials and art and dance and literature and architecture and so on right in the kids' own backgrounds, so they can be Black and successful in school. They can be Latinx and successful in school. They can know Shakespeare and their own cultural background knowledge of that's Shakespeare level too. So that's that affirming the cultural identity, which is number 2. And then the third one, she's noticing that she's looking at inequities, like why are whole groups of people, why is their knowledge left out of the classroom? And she's specifically bringing that in. So she's really doing all 3 of Gloria Ladson Billings' 3 principles of exemplary teaching just in one unit. Now we're going to look for that principle 8 with student-directed activity, okay?
Throughout the year, Andrea's class studied African kings and leaders who ruled over kingdoms in Mali and Benin centuries ago. Students used primary sources to learn about these often absent narratives.
We should remember what Africans did back then.
Now, do you see how that's higher order thinking skills? They're working on something that's often left out of the curriculum, and the students are doing it at higher level thinking.
Because they're important.
In today's lesson, Andrea shared about King Kobina, ruler of a kingdom in Ghana in the late 19th century.
It's like the scepter.
King Kobina was asked to sign an oath to the British in 1873. He refused, saying, "I'm not afraid of your power. You may hang me if you like. I will not sign any paper." He was exiled from his own kingdom for 21 years.
The photo that Andrea had students look at, that tells of his return to his nation in 1894.
Crazy. I have this photograph, and it's of King Kobina and his tribe. I cut it up in 5 sections so that each group could analyze just that piece of the puzzle. And I did that purposely because looking at the entire photo, it could be a bit overwhelming.
We gotta write what we see, what we think, what we know, and what we want.
Now, right there, that's not only higher order thinking skills, but that could be considered joint productive activity, which is principle 1 on our sheet, where the students are working together to create something. So see how they have that chart that they're making? That's actually a product that they're making together. So joint productive activity, they actually have to be producing something. Okay, we're still looking for SDA Principle 8, Student Directed Activity.
We had to think on what was the picture going to be about before we put all the pictures together.
Charlie.
I'm making.
I wonder if they're in the town. I think they live together because it kind of looks like they look like.
I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this just a little bit.
I can tell the now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Primary source analysis challenges students because it requires them to think critically.
Oh, so you think this man is dressed differently from the other people? That's interesting. So you guys believe this is the king?
Do you guys think that the person that's taken the photograph is black or white?
Well, I think it's black.
Yeah,
And then it's most likely to be African to make.
Again, we have lots and lots of higher order thinking skills here where the students are doing much more than just simply repeating what the teacher asked in a answering a question that the teacher already knows the answer to. It's very much higher order. What you see, and I think I skipped over it a little bit, it's a little further back here where the kids are using primary sources right here. Let me push play on this a little bit.
Yeah, no, he loves caring.
Primary source analysis challenges students because it requires them to think critically.
Okay, so what's happening here is that the learners are able to go to different centers and they're deciding which primary sources they want to use. So they have questions that they're exploring in relation to this unit on kings. And so the students actually have some input into what part of that unit that they're studying. And so they're choosing which primary sources will help them to answer the questions. So this young lady is working at a table where she's got a magnifying glass and she's looking at pictures. But she could go to another part of the room where they have maps and they have books and they have different things that she can pull up as primary sources. So that, do you see how that student directed activity, they're following what they're directing as I'm trying to answer this question about this unit in Kings. I'm trying to explore this. How can I best answer that question? What sources can I use? And they go and use those different sources and compile their resources like that. Okay, so you can see how this really brings together so nicely, really Ladson-Billings' 3 principles of higher academic achievement. They're doing higher order learning skills all day long. It's really affirming who the learners are, bringing in this background knowledge and histories that's usually not reflecting them. And then it's very much about, looking at why was this knowledge left out of the curriculum. They're looking at inequities. That's the criticality part. And specifically for us right here, we do see student-directed activity, that principle 8, because the students have a lot of choice in this particular point in their unit where they're making choices about what evidence they're going to use, and explore to try to answer their questions. They're moving around from center to center to answer the questions. The students have different questions that they're working on. And then they're going to bring this all together as a whole to, as a class, conclude their learning about this King's unit. Okay, so if you're saying that you see student-directed activity on your in a lesson, it has to be something where the students have some choice about their learning. It could be the topic that they're learning about. It could be a source. It just has to be something that they're choosing, that they have input into it about, I have to do a final project. I could do this, this, or this, or this. They have to have some sort of choice in the lesson for Principle 8 to be there. Okay? All right. Well, thank you for listening. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and end this recording now. Okay?